watercolour is very, very loose. I don't tend to do, you know, really close. I know that there's somebody here who does botanical painting. I mean, that's a fine, amazing thing all of its own. But if you could sort of do what the opposite is, that's me. I need, you know, lots of pigment, lots of water, and splash it on. I'll do a little bit of that. It'll be tricky because this is upright, but I have to keep it upright because I have to keep in with the photographer. So it has to stay quite upright. That kind of shows what I do. It's very, very loose, as you can see. The colours all blend in. I haven't made any attempt to make it a perfect iris, but people will look at it and they see it. It's an emotional content, hopefully, that they have with it. The next one I'm going to show you it's St. Mark's in Venice. I just had a couple of minutes to do this. And so again, it's terribly quick. There's no detail whatsoever, but it looks more lively to me. So that's another thing that I would do. And the last one is more of a value sketch really, and this is where I used to live in St Andrews in Fife. That's a gate, it's called the West Port. There was the north, south, east and west ports in St Andrews, which were the medieval entrances to the city, the old city of St Andrews. So that's an example of a finished painting. So my way of working is to have lots and lots of water and lots of pigment. I've drawn some leaf shapes here, but I don't want you to think, oh, that's the thing and that's something else. It's not, it's just leaf shapes that I've done. Normally, before you start painting anything at all, you need to get your colours really wet and juicy. Now the colours that I use are Daniel Smith. They're a little bit pricey again, but there's so much pigment in them and it doesn't take long before they release all their pigment. Now, something that I do like to do is to mix my own greens, because there again, they're so much more lively. So for that, to mix my own green, I need some white, I need some black. Normally, the way of making green is blue and yellow. That's the one we all know, various yellows. For a spring green, we use a lemon yellow, and for a mellow green, we use a Naples or a yellow ochre or something like that. But I quite like to use black. Now this might be tricky because it's going to run terribly. I apologise in advance. And then I need a yellow. I'm not going to make an awful lot of effort to fill it all in. It's just sort of saying to it, okay, there you go, there's a black and there's a yellow. Now do what you want to do with it. Watercolour paints itself. Give it the right opportunity. Make sure it's not too warm, it's not too cold, it's not too windy. Apply the right amount of pigment and the right amount of water, and you can practice all of that on your knee in front of the telly, and it will do it itself. Now this is a ready-made green, undersea green, and I'm going to mix it with, I can't say the word, it's a yellow. Thank you. Would you come to all of my watercolour workshops? I can't say, I call it quin, but it's that word that you said. I can paint, but I can't speak. Right, so there's my undersea green mixed with that colour. And then we have a different effect altogether. And to that, I'm just going to add some clear water, but I'm just going to catch it. My American friend calls that kissing, when that's you two colours just touch, you know, or a white and a clear water and a pigment just touch. Just call it kissing, because it needs to be light, like a butterfly. Because if you barge your brush into it, you get a different effect altogether. Here, you've got things that look a little bit lively. Now into that dark wash, I'm going to drop a little bit of red, just the tiniest bit, and see if it does things. Well, it's all run down to the bottom, so it's not going to do anything at all. I'll just draw out some veins. I don't have a leaf in front of me, so you could say, oh, the veins don't look like that, they look like this, but that doesn't matter, it's just a painting. I'm just painting a leaf. Don't ever make excuses to anybody about the way your painting looks. Because they might be right, but you don't want to let them know that. I tell you what we'll do this time, we'll put in, and then I'll put in some of this quin yellow on top. No, it's called quinacridone. Now you can see a green is starting to come there now, but it's a very much fresher green than that one is there, and it's also not blended because it just wants to run down. It's not smudging like it should. Another quite nice thing to do if you're doing something like leaves is to get your brush and go like that, because for some reason that will liven the whole thing up. Now I'll add some water to that and see if we can get it to run a little bit. Now you could add all these colours very carefully, one on top of the other, when it's dry, but then you'd have to be really careful about the edges of your marks. This way you just slap it down and say to watercolour, okay, you do it, because you'll do it better than me. And the watercolour will. Give it the opportunity and it'll make it beautifully. Now you'll all know about dry brush and wet on wet, don't you? Hands up anybody who doesn't, so that I can... No, you all know. Okay, so I don't need to explain that. All these edges are dry brush, which again just gives a more lively kind of feel to it. If you do a proper edge, it's so formal, and if you get it wrong, it looks wrong. Whereas with a dry brush edge, it just looks better, and it looks as if it might be right. Right, okay, I think I shall mix some yellow in with that. In with the black now, I've put the quin yellow, and it makes a completely different green again. I'll do one mixed with the lemon yellow so that you can see. See, that's a colder green, that's a warmer green. And that's because of the yellow and the black as opposed to the blue and the green. If anybody wants to ask questions, that would be great, and then I can stop what I'm doing and answer them. Not that I don't want to paint, it's just that you know what it's like with watercolour, you've just got to wait for it to...
That's a rough paper.
It's the knot. Another thing that you can do, it usually has to be when your paper is flat, is to make a wet wash like that and then just drop clear water on it, and it pushes all the pigment out, and so you get, that will dry paler in there. If you want to make a line, I'll do it, where is it dry? That's dry. If you want to make a line, just put clear water on it and then dab, and you have a little very faint line there. So that's another ploy for making veins. Right, I think because it's taking a long time to dry, I might just leave it at that. Okay, so that's my way of working with watercolour. It's not, you know, cleverly defined and really neat. It's very, very much more splashy. If I was doing a grey roof, for instance, I would mix blue and I would mix brown, probably a burnt sienna, and that would be my grey. If I wanted it to be a bit bluer than that, if I wanted to be a wee bit colder, I'd do that. That's quite a good ploy for making a grey in watercolour, because that grey will come closer to you than that grey, because that's cold and it pushes further back. But they're both made of the same colours. They're both made of French ultramarine in this case and burnt sienna, so that they're going to be like each other, but one's infinitely colder than the other. There are various other little bits and pieces, but as I say, I'm just going to call it a halt at that.